My name is Evangeline, and I thought I knew my family until I discovered they had been using my identity to build my sister's dream restaurant empire. For 2 years, my parents secretly opened 3 successful establishments under my name while I struggled through law school. When debt collectors started calling me about unpaid supplier bills worth 6 figures, I realized the devastating truth. My own blood had committed identity theft, destroyed my credit, and handed everything to my golden child sister, while leaving me to face the legal consequences. Before we dive into this incredible family betrayal story, I would love to know where you are watching from. Please hit that like button if family drama gets your heart racing like mine, and make sure to subscribe because this revenge story has more twists than a pretzel factory. You will not believe how deep this rabbit hole goes and what I did to get my justice. The first sign something was wrong came on a Tuesday morning in October when my phone rang at 7 in the morning. I was cramming for my constitutional law exam, surrounded by coffee cups and highlighters, when an aggressive voice demanded payment for outstanding catering equipment rentals. Miss Evangeline Morrison, your account is 90 days past due. We need immediate payment of $12,000, or we begin legal proceedings. I sat there confused, clutching my phone. I think you have the wrong person. I have never rented catering equipment in my life. Evangeline Morrison's social security number ending in 4729, correct? My blood ran cold. That was indeed my social security number. The next 3 hours became a nightmare of phone calls. 5 different vendors, 2 food suppliers, and 3 equipment rental companies all had my name. My social security number and my supposed signature on contracts dating back 24 months. The total debt exceeded $60,000, and my credit score had plummeted to 412. I drove straight to my parents' house in the suburbs, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. Mom was in her garden, tending to her prize-winning roses, acting like nothing had changed. Dad sat on the front porch reading his newspaper, the picture of suburban tranquility. "We need to talk," I announced, storming up their driveway. Mom looked up from her flowers with that innocent expression she perfected when I was 5 and caught her eating my Halloween candy. "What about honey?" "About the fact that someone has been using my identity to run a business. About the fact that I have $60,000 in debt I never incurred. About the fact that my credit is destroyed and I do not know why." Dad folded his newspaper slowly, and I saw something flicker across his face. Guilt, recognition, fear. "Evangeline, sit down. Let us explain." That was when they told me about Bellamore Bistro, Sunrise Cafe, and the Garden Table. 3 restaurants my younger sister Penelope had always dreamed of opening. 3 restaurants that were thriving, profitable, and completely illegal. Penelope needed a clean credit history to get the business loans, Mom explained, wringing her hands. Her credit score was too low from those college mistakes. "You were in law school, busy with your studies? We thought you would never find out." "You thought I would never find out that you stole my identity." "We did not steal anything," Dad interjected. "We are your parents. We brought you into this world. We gave you that name. We have every right to use it." I stared at him in disbelief. "You have every right to commit identity theft because you are my biological father." "Do not be so dramatic, Evangeline. Penelope is making good money now. She can pay you back." "Pay me back? Dad, this is not about money. This is about the fact that you destroyed my credit, put me in debt. I did not incur, and did it all behind my back for 2 years. This is about the fact that when those businesses fail or get sued, I am legally responsible." Mom started crying. Then those manipulative tears she used whenever she wanted to make me feel guilty for standing up for myself. "We did it for family honey. Penelope was so desperate, so heartbroken about her dreams. We just wanted to help." "You wanted to help her by destroying me. You are being selfish," Dad said, his voice getting louder. "Penelope has 3 children to feed. She needed this opportunity. You are young. Your credit will recover. This was about survival." I realized then that they saw me as collateral damage, acceptable casualties in their mission to save my sister's dreams. I was the responsible one, the one who paid my bills on time and studied hard and never asked for help. Penelope was the free spirit, the one who made poor choices and needed constant rescue. "Where is Penelope now?" I asked. "She is at the flagship restaurant. Business has been incredible. She is thinking about expanding to a fourth location." "A fourth location? Using my name? Adding more debt to my credit report?" They exchanged glances, and I knew the answer before Mom spoke. "Well, she found this perfect spot downtown, and the rent is reasonable." I stood up so fast, my chair fell backward. "You are actively destroying my future for her present. Do you understand that?" "Stop being so dramatic," Dad said again. "Family helps family. When you were little and needed surgery, did we hesitate to help you? When you wanted law school, did we question the expense? You are comparing medical care and education to identity theft. We are comparing family loyalty to selfishness." That was the moment I realized they would never see me as anything more than a resource to be exploited for my sister's benefit. I had been the good daughter, the responsible one, the one who never caused problems. And my reward was having my identity stolen and my future mortgaged without my consent. I want every document, every contract, every piece of paper related to these businesses. I want them tonight. "Evangeline, do not do anything rash. Think about your sister's children." "I want the documents or I file a police report for identity theft. Your choice." Mom gasped dramatically. "You would send your own parents to jail. You would steal from your own daughter." Dad's face hardened. "Fine, but when this family falls apart, when Penelope loses everything and those children suffer, that blood will be on your hands." I looked at both of them. These people who raised me, who taught me right from wrong, who were now trying to make me feel guilty for objecting to being defrauded by my own family. "No," I said quietly. "That blood is on yours. You made this choice when you decided my future was worth less than her present." I left their house that evening with a box of documents and a crystal clear understanding that my parents had never seen me as a daughter. They had seen me as an asset to be liquidated when convenient. The drive back to my apartment was silent, except for the sound of my phone buzzing with notifications. More vendors, more debt collectors, more evidence of the systematic destruction of my financial life. But I was not just angry anymore. I was determined. They had taught me that family loyalty was everything, but they had forgotten to mention it was supposed to work both ways. The next morning, I skipped all my classes and sat in the law school library researching identity theft statutes, business fraud regulations, and civil remedies for financial damage. My constitutional law textbook remained unopened while I dove into criminal codes and precedent cases. Professor Martinez found me there at noon, surrounded by printed statutes and legal pads covered in notes. "Miss Morrison, you missed my lecture this morning. That is unlike you." I looked up at her, this woman who had become my mentor over the past 2 years. "Professor, hypothetically speaking, if someone used your identity to open businesses without your knowledge, what legal remedies would you have?" Her eyebrows rose. "That is oddly specific for a hypothetical question." "It is personal." She sat down across from me. "Tell me everything." An hour later, Professor Martinez leaned back in her chair, her expression a mixture of shock and professional interest. "Evangeline, this is not just identity theft. This is business fraud, potentially wire fraud, if any interstate banking was involved, and definitely civil fraud with significant damages." "What are my options?" "You could file criminal charges. Identity theft is a felony in this state, but given that it is family..." She paused, studying my face. "There is also civil litigation. You could sue for damages, demand immediate cessation of the use of your identity, and force them to transfer everything into your sister's name properly. What would you do? I would burn their world to the ground, but I am petty like that. She smiled grimly. More professionally, I would send a cease and desist letter, immediately document everything, and then decide whether to pursue criminal or civil remedies based on their response. That afternoon, I called every vendor whose information I had found in the box of documents. The picture that emerged was even worse than I had imagined. The 3 restaurants were not just successful, they were wildly profitable. Bellamore Bistro alone was generating over $30,000 monthly in profit. Sunrise Cafe and the Garden Table were each clearing $20,000 monthly. My sister was living off profits from businesses legally owned by me while I survived on ramen noodles and student loans. But the vendors also revealed something else. My parents and sister had been planning expansion for months. They had already submitted loan applications for 2 additional locations using my identity, my credit history, and my legal liability. I spent the evening crafting a cease and desist letter that would make my professors proud. It demanded immediate cessation of all business operations under my name, transfer of all assets and liabilities to my sister within 30 days, and compensation for credit damage. I also demanded they withdraw any pending loan applications using my identity. The next morning, I had the letter hand-delivered to each restaurant and to my parents' home by a professional process server. I wanted them to understand this was not a family discussion anymore. This was legal warfare. My phone started ringing within 2 hours. "Evangeline, what have you done?" Mom was crying again. "There are lawyers here. They are shutting down the restaurants." I sent a cease and desist order. They have 30 days to transfer everything into Penelope's name legally. You are destroying her life. Those restaurants employ 12 people. Those restaurants were built on stolen identity. I am not destroying anything. I am correcting a crime. Dad grabbed the phone. "You ungrateful little brat. After everything we did for you, this is how you repay us. After everything you did for me, Dad, you stole my identity. You destroyed my credit. You put me $60,000 in debt without my knowledge." What exactly am I supposed to be grateful for? You are supposed to be grateful that we gave you life, that we raised you, that we supported your expensive education dreams. And you are supposed to be grateful that I am not filing criminal charges. Silence. What do you mean, criminal charges? Identity theft is a felony. Dad, business fraud is a felony. I could have had you arrested instead of serving papers. I chose family loyalty over justice, something you never chose for me. You would not dare. Try me. Penelope called that evening, sobbing hysterically. "Evie, please, you are ruining everything. My whole life is those restaurants. My kids' future is those restaurants. Your whole life is built on my stolen identity." I did not know Mom and Dad handled everything. I thought they had worked out some kind of family partnership. You thought Mom and Dad worked out a partnership where you got all the benefits and I got all the liability, and that seemed fair to you. I was desperate. My ex-husband left me with 3 kids and massive debt. I could not get loans on my own. So you decided to get them using my name instead. I was going to tell you I was going to cut you in on the profits. When after you had expanded to 10 locations and destroyed my credit permanently, you do not understand what it is like to have children depending on you. And you do not understand what it is like to discover your own family has been systematically defrauding you for 2 years. She was quiet for a moment, then her tone changed completely. Fine. You want to play hardball? I will tell everyone what kind of person you really are. I will tell them you are trying to destroy a single mother's livelihood out of spite. I will tell them you care more about paperwork than your own nieces and nephews. Go ahead. Tell them the truth. that I objected to having my identity stolen. You know what, Evangeline? You were always jealous of me. Always jealous that Mom and Dad loved me more. This is not about the restaurants. This is about you finally having power over me and using it to hurt me. I almost laughed. Penelope, if I wanted to hurt you, I would have called the police instead of a lawyer. If I wanted to destroy you, I would press criminal charges instead of demanding civil remedies. I am trying to fix this mess with minimal damage to everyone involved. Minimal damage, you are shutting down my restaurants. I am demanding they be transferred into your name legally. You can keep operating them. You just have to do it without using my identity. The banks will never approve loans in my name. Then maybe you should have thought about that before building a business empire on stolen credit. She hung up on me. 2 hours later, Mom called back. Evangeline, we need to meet. All of us. We need to work this out as a family. There is nothing to work out, Mom. You have 27 days to comply with the cease and desist order. What if we refuse? Then I file criminal charges and civil suit simultaneously. And Mom, if you think a cease and desist letter was aggressive, wait until you see what actual litigation looks like. The meeting they demanded took place 3 days later at a family restaurant ironically named Honest John's Diner. The irony was not lost on me as I walked in to find my parents Penelope and surprisingly my Aunt Rebecca and Uncle Thomas already seated in a corner booth. You brought reinforcements? I observed sliding into the booth across from them. We brought family, Dad corrected. People who care about what happens to this family. Aunt Rebecca leaned forward. Evangeline, honey, your parents told us what happened. This seems like something we can work out without lawyers and legal papers. I looked at her carefully. Aunt Rebecca had always been the family peacekeeper, the one who smoothed over conflicts and convinced everyone to just get along. But she was also a former bank manager who understood finances better than anyone at this table. Aunt Rebecca, what exactly did they tell you happened? Well, that there was some confusion about business ownership and now you want to shut down Penelope's restaurants. Did they mention that they used my name, my social security number, and my credit history to obtain business loans without my knowledge or consent? Aunt Rebecca's expression shifted. What do you mean? I pulled out my phone and showed her screenshots of my credit report. I mean, I discovered $60,000 in business debt on my credit report that I never incurred. I mean, my credit score dropped from 740 to 412 because of late payments on accounts I did not know existed. Uncle Thomas grabbed the phone, scrolling through the credit report. His face grew pale. This is identity theft. Thomas, do not be dramatic, Mom interjected. We are family. It is not theft when it is family. Actually, Mom, it is still theft when it is family. It is just theft with better holiday dinners afterward. Uncle Thomas continued scrolling. Evangeline, some of these accounts show missed payments from 18 months ago. Your credit has been damaged for over a year without your knowledge. Penelope shifted uncomfortably. Look, mistakes were made, okay, but the restaurants are successful now. I can start paying Evie back. Pay me back for what? I asked. For the damage to my credit, for the legal liability I never agreed to take on, for the opportunity cost of not being able to get my own loans because my debt-to-income ratio is destroyed. Aunt Rebecca was now studying the credit report intently. Evangeline, as someone who worked in banking for 20 years, I need to tell you something important. This level of credit damage will affect you for 7 to 10 years minimum. It will impact your ability to buy a house, get a car loan, even rent an apartment. We know that, I said quietly. That is why I sent the cease and desist letter. Dad slammed his hand on the table. Enough, Evangeline, you are going to drop this lawyer nonsense and let Penelope keep her restaurants. End of discussion. Actually, Dad, it is beginning of discussion, because I spoke with Professor Martinez yesterday and she introduced me to some very interesting people. I pulled out a folder and set it on the table. Meet my new legal team. The first business card I laid down read, Sarah Chin Attorney, Identity Theft and Financial Fraud. The second read, Marcus Williams CPA, Forensic Accounting. The third read, Jennifer Liu Attorney, Family Business Litigation. You hired lawyers, Mom gasped. I hired specialists, people who handle identity theft cases professionally, people who understand exactly what was done to me and what remedies are available. Uncle Thomas picked up Sarah Chen's business card. Evangeline, how did you afford this? Law students do not typically have money for legal teams. Funny thing about having your identity stolen by family members? It turns out there are lawyers who will take these cases on contingency. They get paid when we win, and they are very confident we will win. Penelope was staring at the business cards like they might explode. What do they want you to do? They want me to file both criminal and civil charges. They want to pursue full damages, including punitive damages for the emotional distress of family betrayal. They want to make this case a precedent for family identity theft prosecutions. The table fell silent. But, I continued, I told them I wanted to try family resolution first. So here is my revised offer. I pulled out a document and laid it in the center of the table. Complete transfer of all business assets and liabilities to Penelope within 14 days. Full documentation of all financial transactions involving my identity. Payment of $15,000 to cover credit repair services and legal fees incurred to date, and written agreement that my identity will never be used for any business purposes again. $15,000, Dad exploded. Where is Penelope supposed to get $15,000? From the profits of the restaurants that were built using my identity. According to my forensic accountant's preliminary review, those 3 restaurants have generated approximately $200,000 in profit over the past 18 months. I am asking for less than 10%. Aunt Rebecca was reading the proposal carefully. This seems more than reasonable considering the alternative. The alternative being, Mom asked. I laid down another document. Criminal charges for identity theft, business fraud, and wire fraud. Civil suit for actual damages, punitive damages, and legal fees. Immediate seizure of all business assets pending litigation. And about 2 years of very public legal proceedings that will be covered by local media because family identity theft is apparently quite newsworthy. Uncle Thomas whistled softly. Evangeline, you have really thought this through. I had help. Sarah Chen has handled 47 family identity theft cases. She says, mine is actually one of the more clear-cut cases she has seen because of the extensive documentation and the ongoing nature of the fraud. Penelope finally spoke. What if I cannot get approved for business loans in my own name? Then you will have learned an important lesson about building businesses on sustainable credit rather than stolen identity. You are being heartless, Mom said. Those children depend on those restaurants. Those children depend on their mother making legal, ethical business decisions. Right now, they are depending on profits from criminal activity. Aunt Rebecca set down the proposal. I think Evangeline is being more than fair. If this were anyone else, criminal charges would have been filed immediately. Rebecca, whose side are you on? Dad demanded. I am on the side of legal behavior and family accountability. What you did was wrong, and Evangeline has every right to be furious. Uncle Thomas nodded. I agree. This could have been handled much worse. I could see the family dynamics shifting. My parents had expected united family pressure to make me back down. Instead, they were facing family members who understood the seriousness of what they had done. Fine, Penelope said suddenly. I will sign your papers. I will transfer everything, but I want you to know that you are destroying my children's security for the sake of paperwork. I am protecting my own security for the sake of my future. When those restaurants fail, because I cannot get expansion capital, when I have to lay off employees, when my kids have to move to a smaller apartment, I want you to remember that you chose legal technicalities over family. I looked around the table at these people who had raised me, who had taught me about right and wrong, who were now trying to make me feel guilty for objecting to financial fraud. When you wake up tomorrow morning and realize you still have 3 profitable restaurants that you legally own, when you realize your children still have food and shelter, when you realize I could have destroyed you completely and chose not to, I want you to remember that I chose family over justice. The meeting ended with signed agreements and very cold farewells, but as I walked to my car, Aunt Rebecca caught up with me. "Evangeline, I need to tell you something. This situation is worse than you know." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean?" "Your cousin David works at First National Bank. He told me yesterday that your parents submitted loan applications last week for 2 more restaurant locations. They were planning to expand even after you discovered what they had done." I stared at her. They were going to keep using my identity even after I confronted them. It gets worse. The loan amounts were for $150,000 each. If those had been approved, you would have been liable for $300,000 in additional debt. That was when I realized this was never about desperation or poor decisions. This was about systematic exploitation with no intention of stopping. They had viewed my identity as their permanent business asset. I pulled out my phone and called Sarah Chen. "Sarah, it is Evangeline Morrison. I want to file criminal charges." Filing criminal charges felt like crossing a bridge I could never uncross. Sarah Chen assured me we had an airtight case, and within 48 hours, Detective Michael Rodriguez was sitting in my tiny apartment taking my statement. "Miss Morrison, I have been investigating financial crimes for 12 years, and I want you to know that family identity theft cases are among the most emotionally difficult for victims. You are making the right choice." Over the next week, the investigation moved quickly. Detective Rodriguez interviewed my parents Penelope and several restaurant employees. The evidence was overwhelming. Forged documents, falsified loan applications, and a paper trail that led directly back to my family. But then Aunt Rebecca called with news that changed everything. "Evangeline, I need to see you immediately. There is something about this case you need to know." We met at a coffee shop downtown, and I could tell from her expression that whatever she had to say would not be good news. "I spoke with your cousin David again yesterday. The bank investigation turned up something unexpected." "What kind of unexpected?" "The loan applications your parents submitted last week. They were not the first ones. There have been others over the past 6 months. Applications for business credit lines, equipment loans, even a commercial real estate mortgage." My blood ran cold. "How much?" "Total potential liability of over $500,000. I felt the room spinning. $500,000? But here is the thing that makes no sense. All of those applications were denied because of credit issues on your report. The banks flagged suspicious activity months ago." "What suspicious activity?" Aunt Rebecca pulled out a folder. "David managed to get copies of the credit inquiries. Someone has been monitoring your credit report obsessively. Multiple inquiries per month from different sources." "Who?" "That is what I thought you should know. The monitoring requests are coming from Sarah Chen's law office." I stared at her. "My lawyer has been monitoring my credit for over 6 months, since long before you ever contacted her office." The implications hit me like a freight train. "Are you saying Sarah Chen knew about this before I did?" "I am saying Sarah Chen has been tracking your case since it began. And Evangeline, there is something else. David did some checking on her previous identity theft cases, the 47 cases she mentioned to you." "What about them?" 32 of them were also family identity theft cases involving business fraud, and in every single case, the resolution involved the lawyer's firm acquiring the business assets at below-market prices through bankruptcy proceedings. I felt sick. She is running a scam. I think she is running a very sophisticated business model. Find families committing identity theft. Wait for the victims to discover it. Offer legal services, then use the legal proceedings to acquire profitable businesses cheaply. But she took my case on contingency. She does not get paid unless we win. She gets paid when the businesses are seized and auctioned. Her firm has been the successful bidder on 18 restaurant properties in the past 3 years. I sat there in stunned silence, realizing that I had traded one betrayal for another. My family had stolen my identity, and my lawyer was using my case to steal their businesses. Aunt Rebecca, what should I do? You need a new lawyer. Someone who is not planning to profit from your family's assets. That afternoon, I confronted Sarah Chen in her office. She did not even bother to deny it. Miss Morrison, you came to me for justice. I am providing it. Your family will face appropriate consequences, and you will be compensated for your damages. By you acquiring their restaurants at auction prices. Business is business. Your family created this situation through criminal behavior. I am simply ensuring that their criminal enterprises do not continue to profit them. You have been planning this since before I even knew about the identity theft. I have been planning appropriate consequences for criminal behavior. Your family stole from you. I am ensuring they pay the price, while you profit from their assets. She shrugged. Justice and profit are not mutually exclusive. I walked out of her office feeling more betrayed than ever. My family had stolen my identity, and my lawyer was stealing my case for her own profit. Everyone seemed to view me as either a victim to be exploited or a resource to be utilized. That evening, I called Detective Rodriguez. Detective, I need to ask you something confidential. Is it normal for lawyers to monitor potential clients' credit reports before those clients contact them? Long pause. No, Miss Morrison, that would be highly irregular and potentially illegal. What if I told you my lawyer has been monitoring my credit for 6 months before I ever contacted her? I would tell you that sounds like predatory legal practices, and I would recommend you file a complaint with the State Bar Association immediately. What happens to my criminal case? Your criminal case proceeds regardless. The evidence speaks for itself. But Miss Morrison, if your attorney has been engaging in unethical behavior, you need different representation. That night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, feeling like every adult in my life had betrayed me. My parents stole my identity. My sister built her life on my stolen credit. My lawyer was planning to profit from my family's downfall. But then I remembered something Professor Martinez had told me. Sometimes the system fails you, but that does not mean justice is impossible. It just means you have to be smarter than the system. The next morning, I fired Sarah Chen and her entire legal team via certified letter. I also filed complaints with the State Bar Association and contacted the FBI's white-collar crime division about potential legal fraud. But I did not drop the criminal charges against my family. Instead, I decided to represent myself with guidance from Professor Martinez. Evangeline, representing yourself in a criminal case is extremely challenging, she warned. More challenging than watching lawyers steal my case for profit while my family steals my identity. She smiled grimly. Point taken. Let me introduce you to someone who can help. That afternoon, I met James Harrison, a recently retired prosecutor who specialized in family financial crimes. He had spent 30 years putting white-collar criminals in prison and had no interest in acquiring business assets or making profits from family destruction. Miss Morrison, I will help you for 2 reasons. First, your case has merit and deserves proper representation. Second, I am deeply offended by lawyers who prey on victims of family crimes. What would you charge for representation? Nothing. This is about justice, not profit, but I want something in return. What? When this is over, I want you to help me expose the predatory legal practices that Sarah Chen and others like her are using. We need to protect other victims from legal exploitation. For the first time in weeks, I felt like someone was on my side for the right reasons. James Harrison proved to be exactly what I needed. A legal professional who cared more about justice than profit. Within days of taking over my case, he uncovered evidence that even Detective Rodriguez had missed. Evangeline, Your former attorney was not just monitoring your credit report, she was actively interfering with your family's legitimate attempts to resolve this situation. What do you mean? He spread documents across his desk. Remember when your parents tried to transfer the businesses into Penelope's name after you sent the cease and desist letter? Those transfer applications were mysteriously delayed at the county recorder's office. Delayed how? Sarah Chin's firm filed injunctive relief requests claiming ongoing litigation even though no litigation had been filed yet. She was deliberately preventing resolution to force the situation toward criminal proceedings. Why would she do that? Because resolved family disputes do not result in asset seizures. She needed your family to fail at resolving this privately so she could acquire their businesses through legal proceedings. The scope of Sarah Chin's manipulation was staggering. She had been orchestrating the destruction of my family's businesses while pretending to represent my interests, but James had more revelations. I also discovered something about those mysterious loan applications your parents submitted. The ones that were denied due to credit issues. What about them? They were not submitted by your parents. They were submitted by Sarah Chin's firm, using your parents' forged signatures. I stared at him. She was creating additional fraud to strengthen the criminal case. Exactly. And here is the beautiful part. She documented everything. Her firm keeps meticulous records of their client acquisition strategies. She never expected anyone to investigate her methods. Are you saying we have evidence of her crimes? We have evidence of systematic legal fraud, client manipulation, and conspiracy to commit business fraud. She was not just profiting from your family's crimes. She was actively creating additional crimes to maximize her profits. That afternoon, James introduced me to someone who would change everything: FBI Special Agent Maria Gonzalez from the White Collar Crime Division. Miss Morrison, your case has evolved beyond simple family identity theft. We are now investigating what appears to be a sophisticated legal fraud operation targeting multiple families across 3 states. How many families? 47, which matches the number of cases your former attorney claimed to have handled. We believe Sarah Chin has been running this operation for at least 5 years. Agent Gonzalez explained that my complaint had triggered a federal investigation into predatory legal practices. Other victims had come forward with similar stories. Lawyers who seemed to find them just when they needed help most, who offered services on contingency, and who somehow always ended up acquiring their family assets through legal proceedings. Your willingness to speak up may have saved dozens of other families from similar exploitation. But the investigation revealed something even more shocking about my own case. Miss Morrison, we need to tell you something about your sister's restaurants. They were never as successful as your family claimed. What do you mean? James pulled out forensic accounting reports. The profit figures your family quoted were fabricated. Bellamore Bistro was actually losing money. Sunrise Cafe and the Garden Table were barely breaking even. Then how was Penelope living so well? Agent Gonzalez answered. She was taking cash advances against future credit applications. She was essentially living off borrowed money secured by your identity with no ability to pay it back. So the restaurants were failing. Worse, they were insolvent. Your family was using your identity to secure loans they knew they could never repay, effectively running a bankruptcy scheme with you as the fall guy. The realization hit me like a physical blow. My family had not just stolen my identity to give my sister a chance at success. They had stolen it to finance her inevitable failure, while ensuring I would be left with the debt. But there is something else you need to know, James continued. We found evidence that your parents were planning to declare bankruptcy on your behalf to eliminate the restaurant debts. They were going to force me into bankruptcy. They had already consulted with a bankruptcy attorney. The plan was to claim you had suffered mental health issues that led to poor business decisions, file for bankruptcy protection, and then start over with a clean slate while you dealt with the legal and financial consequences. I felt like I was drowning in betrayal. Every time I thought I understood the scope of my family's deception, it got worse. However, Agent Gonzalez said with a slight smile, their plan has backfired spectacularly. How? Because they documented everything. Your parents kept detailed records of their fraud schemes, apparently believing they would need evidence for insurance claims or bankruptcy proceedings. They created a paper trail that proves premeditation, an ongoing conspiracy. James laid out photographs of documents. Your father kept a notebook detailing every false loan application, every forged signature, every false financial statement. It reads like a confession. What does this mean for the criminal case? It means your family is facing federal charges for conspiracy wire fraud, mail fraud, and identity theft. The evidence is so overwhelming that the U.S. Attorney's Office expects guilty pleas within 30 days. And Sarah Chen, Agent Gonzalez smiled broadly. Sarah Chen is facing federal charges for conspiracy, legal fraud, client manipulation, and racketeering. Her entire operation is being dismantled, and the FBI is working to return stolen assets to the families she defrauded. What about the restaurants? James consulted his notes. The restaurants will be liquidated to pay creditors, which removes all debt from your credit report. The court will also order credit restoration and financial compensation for the damage to your credit score. How much compensation? Based on our damages analysis, approximately $75,000 plus legal fees. I sat there trying to process the magnitude of what had happened. In trying to destroy me, my family had destroyed themselves. In trying to exploit my case, Sarah Chen had exposed herself to federal prosecution. But here is the most important part, Agent Gonzalez said. Your willingness to pursue justice despite family pressure has helped us identify and stop a criminal organization that was targeting vulnerable families. You may have saved hundreds of people from similar exploitation. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt like my suffering had served a purpose beyond my own case. What happens now? Now, James said, we watch justice work exactly as it should. Your family faces appropriate consequences for their crimes. Sarah Chen faces appropriate consequences for hers, and you get your life back with the financial means to rebuild properly. That evening, I called Professor Martinez to thank her for connecting me with James Harrison. Evangeline, you should know that James has been so impressed with your case research and legal analysis that he wants to offer you a position at his consulting firm when you graduate. Doing what? Helping other families who have been targeted by legal fraud operations, using your experience to protect people from the kind of exploitation you faced. I realized then that my family's betrayal had led me to discover not just my own strength, but my calling to help others find theirs. 3 months later, I stood in federal court watching my parents and sister plead guilty to multiple felony charges. The judge sentenced each of them to 18 months in federal prison, followed by 5 years of supervised probation and full restitution of damages. Sarah Chen received 4 years in federal prison and was ordered to pay over $2 million in restitution to the families she had defrauded. Her law license was permanently revoked, and her assets were seized to compensate her victims. But the most satisfying moment came when the judge addressed my family directly. The defendants in this case violated the most fundamental trust that exists in human society: the trust between family members. They systematically exploited their own daughter and sister, viewing her not as a person to be protected and cherished, but as a resource to be exploited for their own benefit. My parents stood with their heads down, finally understanding the gravity of what they had done. Miss Morrison, the judge continued, turning to me, your courage in pursuing justice despite enormous family pressure has not only protected your own future, but has helped law enforcement identify and stop a criminal organization that was targeting vulnerable families nationwide. Your actions have served the cause of justice far beyond your own case. The financial restoration exceeded even James Harrison's projections. Between restitution payments, credit restoration services, and punitive damages, I received $93,000 in compensation. More importantly, my credit score was fully restored and all fraudulent accounts were removed from my record. But money was not the most significant thing I gained from this ordeal. Professor Martinez offered me a position as a research assistant focusing on family financial crimes, which led to a summer internship with the FBI's white-collar crime division. Agent Gonzalez became my mentor, teaching me how to investigate complex financial fraud cases. James Harrison kept his promise about the consulting position. Before I even graduated law school, I was working part-time, helping other identity theft victims navigate the legal system and avoid predatory lawyers like Sarah Chin. The most rewarding case came 6 months after my own resolution. A young man named David contacted our firm after discovering his grandfather had been using his identity to finance a failing construction business. The grandfather had accumulated over $200,000 in debt using David's information and was planning to file bankruptcy in David's name. Using the investigative techniques I had learned from my own case, we were able to expose the fraud quickly and efficiently. But more importantly, we helped David understand that family loyalty does not require accepting financial exploitation. I felt so guilty about pursuing legal action against my grandfather, David told me after his case was resolved. Everyone kept telling me family should forgive family. Family should protect family, I replied. Real family does not steal from each other and then demand forgiveness for the theft. Through my work with other victims, I learned that my experience was unfortunately not unique. Families exploit their own members' identities more often than anyone wants to admit, usually targeting the responsible family members who have good credit and stable finances. But I also learned that justice is possible even in cases involving family betrayal. My relationship with my extended family evolved in unexpected ways. Aunt Rebecca and Uncle Thomas became closer to me than ever, serving as character witnesses during the legal proceedings and providing emotional support throughout the ordeal. We should have spoken up sooner, Aunt Rebecca told me after the sentencing. We knew your parents played favorites with Penelope, but we never imagined they would commit crimes to support her. You could not have known, I assured her. Even I did not know until the debt collectors started calling. Uncle Thomas shook his head. What they did was not favoritism. It was criminal exploitation. There is a difference between supporting a struggling child and destroying another child to do it. They became my chosen family, the people who supported my decisions, even when those decisions were difficult. My parents and Penelope wrote letters from prison asking for forgiveness and requesting that I help them rebuild their relationships with their grandchildren. I responded with carefully worded letters explaining that forgiveness was possible, but reconciliation would require acknowledgement of harm, genuine remorse, and demonstrated behavioral change over time. I am willing to work toward rebuilding our relationship, I wrote, but it will be a relationship based on honesty, respect, and legal behavior. The old relationship where my well-being was sacrificed for Penelope's benefit is permanently over. Penelope's children, my nieces and nephew, were placed with their father during her incarceration. He reached out to thank me for exposing the fraud before it could destroy their financial future completely. If this had continued, he told me, Penelope would have eventually defaulted on hundreds of thousands of dollars in loans, and the creditors would have come after anyone with legal connection to the businesses. You may have saved my kids from years of financial instability. The most unexpected development came during my final semester of law school. Agent Gonzalez offered me a position with the FBI's Financial Crimes Division after graduation. Your experience as a victim gives you insight that trained investigators often lack, she explained. You understand the emotional manipulation and family dynamics that make these crimes so devastating. We need people who can help other victims navigate both the legal system and the emotional trauma. I accepted the position, realizing that my family's betrayal had led me to discover my life's purpose, protecting other people from the kind of exploitation I had endured. On graduation day, Professor Martinez gave me advice I will never forget. Evangeline, what happened to you was terrible, but how you responded to it was remarkable. You chose justice over family pressure, truth over comfortable lies, and courage over convenience. Those choices will serve you well in whatever career you pursue. As I write this story, 18 months have passed since I first discovered my stolen identity. My parents and Penelope are halfway through their prison sentences. The restaurants were liquidated with proceeds going to creditors and restitution payments. Sarah Chen is serving her federal sentence and will never practice law again. But I am thriving in ways I never expected. My work with the FBI allows me to help other families facing similar betrayals. My credit is excellent, my finances are stable, and my chosen family supports my decisions unconditionally. Most importantly, I learned that family loyalty is not about protecting people from the consequences of their actions. Real family loyalty is about holding each other accountable, supporting each other's growth, and refusing to enable destructive behavior. The people who truly love you will respect your boundaries, support your success, and celebrate your achievements. They will not steal from you, lie to you, or sacrifice your future for someone else's present. Sometimes, the family you choose is more loyal than the family you were born into. And sometimes, seeking justice is the most loving thing you can do, for yourself and for the people who wronged you. Have you ever faced a situation where family members expected you to sacrifice your well-being for someone else's benefit? How do you balance family loyalty with personal protection? I would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Your experiences might help other people facing similar situations. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button to help others find it and subscribe for more real-life stories about justice, family drama, and standing up for yourself. Share this with anyone who needs to hear that choosing yourself over toxic family dynamics is not selfish, it is necessary. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, you deserve family members who protect your dreams rather than steal them. The best revenge against betrayal is building a life so successful that their opinions become irrelevant.